All right. Welcome to the Express Technical Committee meeting for January 23rd, 2019. We have a few items on our agenda for today. We're going to start off talking about using scoped modules for Express packages and things. We're going to then continue on from last time, discussions about Express 5.0 and the scope of it. And like discuss like about just descoping things and figuring out like exactly so we just continue on pushing it with the ideas that it'd be a spring release kind of thing, like around the same time like the new major of Node usually flips over. Then after that we'll talk about a proposal for non-arity based error handling in Express, to try to change that traditional way that error handlers are done in Express, and like talk about like this proposal that will help us get away from having it check the arity of your function, which trips people up a lot for various reasons. So, all right, we're gonna let Wes here take it off about the scoped discussion.
Yeah, sure. So I think there's the operational thing, which is we needed to get the Express scope in the first place, so that's taken care of. Doug, did you get an email from NPM on that?
Yes, I did get the email. I knew I forgot something. I was going to actually validate when I logged into my account that it was actually there.
Okay.
While you're talking, I can actually I'll just check that real quick, because I was gonna just validate that they did indeed add it to my. I mean, they said my username and everything, but
yeah, well, presumably we have that figured out. So if we wanted to, we would be able to start publishing modules under the Express scope on NPM. I think there's some prior art in this looking at what Babel did, and I think we should be very wary about following in their path, because I think it caused a lot of churn. So they actually migrated all of their packages into their scope, and I don't have links. Maybe I could find some of the links. I read some of their discussions on this a while back, on why they thought it was a good idea, and I think there's some value in it, partly from messaging to users saying like, hey, look, these are core supported modules. These are ones you can rely on to be maintained, stuff like that. But on the other hand, the problem with what Babel did is migrating people from existing packages they've maybe been using. So if we were going to use it, I think we would probably want to start using it for either new things. So for example, if we have a lot of, if we have some Pillar.js things that do couple directly, or well, I guess we had a little bit of discussion on that. So I think that's something maybe on the table, is what would fit in the Express namespace versus Pillar and JS HTTP, and maybe making sure we have a clean separation there. And then from there, whether or not we publish new modules under it, and if we want to migrate old modules, and if there was, what our plan would be for doing something like that. So I think those are the main discussion points.
Yeah, so I did double check, and I am there as the owner of the organization, just named Express on PM, so it's all set up there. I had to look a little bit because I wasn't sure where the org stuff was, but I am there, and I am an owner of it, so that way it definitely is there. So yeah, I mean, I've thought about a long time ago, like when they first made the scoped announcement, at least, let alone orgs, where basically that was the time where it's like orgs are coming, but they don't exist yet. But we're kind of have scopes. You can publish it under, you can, if you have a user, you can publish it under your own username. And I thought it was a really cool idea, because then you kind of it's good. There's some pros and cons for it, and I think the pros outweigh the cons personally. But for example, one pro is you don't have to fight the global names, for example. So you can make your module, if it's the server, if it's like say like we have a, Express itself right now, like exports like an app class, for example. Like, so if we wanted to like structure that out, you could actually have a module called app or application.
Yep.
And that's fine because it'd be add express/app or add express/application. Same with some of these others. So for example, like if you look at some of the Express middleware, like there's 3 that start with serve dash, and they didn't at first. They were kind of like a little bit over the place. And I was like, all right, let's just these 3 like serve files. So, and I looked up and I saw that, oh, we can make them all serve dash something. Obviously, like of course, nowadays it's even worse, right? So say like we wanted to have something like just serve a file, like just one file. No, I didn't actually look, but I can pretty much guarantee you that's taken. So like, especially if a lot of people like look at other packages that exist, like things like Express is doing, and they'll see this pattern and they'll just copy it all the time. And I mean, it's not bad or anything. But one thing it does is you can't even be like consistent sometimes. So like that's the other thing too, is like a lot of projects tried and then inevitably it fails, where they'll be like, my project is called, widget. So I'm going to publish to widget package to NPM. And then I'm going to publish like widget dash piece and, widget dash sprocket. And they're all like prefixed with widget dash. But then of course people are like, oh, I'm going to make like a server integration for a widget. I'll call it widget dash server. And then next thing you know, they're like, darn it, these people took these names. And it's actually kind of amusing because, so for example, there's various web server projects. So one of them is called Happy, and it was originally made by Walmart's Labs. Now it's an independent project, but like the really amusing thing is like the main like creator of it, he made a bunch of these like pieces of them called basically ridiculous names, and he did it on purpose. He even has like a blog post about it because one, I'm sure he was probably frustrated about obviously all the good global names are taken. He's making at the time like it was still kind of like I think at the time Scopes, like at least the time like I saw it like coming up, like I think Scopes did exist, but like you had compatibility issues because they had to you had to have newer versions of NPM that actually understood Scopes and et cetera, et cetera. But regardless, like so he was just like, okay, I'll make a module that's for errors called boom and like this other module for something I forget what it was for, but it's called poop. I don't know. Like, and I'm serious, and and he's talking about how like it's like this is module names, you're not even using it at the top, and people give him flack for it and whatever. But I think it's just I think it's kind of like a statement about the one of the problems that we have with the global namespace. The other nice thing about a scope, and when I talk about scope, I'm talking about like the way the modules are laid out, whether the organization is just a way to like do access permissions to them a lot easier. Otherwise they operates the same. So the is you can now have it so people know which are from the project effectively and which are not, which I mean is good and bad obviously. Some people can be bad in certain ways where it's like, well I don't feel like I should just make my own Express thing middleware because it's not like official, but I mean it's not any really different.
I think that's a really good point, but I'd like to address the other side of that. Is that one of the feedback I've gotten from the people I talk to about this is that they feel like because Express doesn't provide some of those things, it's actually harder for them to make the right decisions for their applications. So obviously there's a downside in that it squashes competition, but the upside is that new users, this all came up because I was like, I'm making this open API spec, generator thing. And it was almost entirely a ripoff of something that Fastify provides. And when I say provides, I literally mean in their GitHub organization, provided by their core team. And one of my teammates was like, look, Wes, I like Express, but I chose to use Fastify in this new project because look at all these great things it just gives me out of the box. And that's, I think, a really compelling thing, especially nowadays in Node. You know, maybe 5 years ago, people were really more on board with less features, more modularity, build your own framework kind of thing. But there's a large swath of users who are not like that. And if we as a team can help those users also have an easier time onboarding into Express as an ecosystem, not just literally Express, but whatever else, you know, all this other stuff that we do provide that's not necessarily always obvious, right? A lot of the middleware we provide, other middleware we might write in the future, core libraries, like you were talking about the different happy examples, that you might not interact with directly at first, but as you're, you know, growing in your usage, you might realize, oh, look, I didn't realize Express is using this under the hood. I should also use this in my other thing. If we had a space for all of those, I think the benefits outweigh the squashing of the competition in the long run, both for users and for Express as a project. So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, and and that is a struggle too, because so for example, the Fastify example is actually kind of an interesting one, because some of the things I'm saying is the same thing like Happy had tried, which this is one of those aspects where a lot of those middleware, or as they call them, plugins, I guess. I mean, they're not currently middleware, but kind of like the best equivalence you can make between the two. So their plugins are inside their, you know, GitHub organization. So they don't use scopes. They just prefix them all with Fastify dash. They're basically, because they're in the Wild West, no one is prefixing yet. You know, they'll eventually crowd out. But the interesting thing really about that is what they're doing right now is they're doing the, hey, random person on the internet, you want to make this thing? Cool. And we'll just put it in our org. And actually, because they're also iterating kind of not as fast as Happy, but they are iterating on major versions. A lot of those plugins that are in their own org are stale and don't even work in the latest major version, because, you know, they had some guy who just made it. Like, you know, of course they were added to the org and everything, but like, you know, they're kind of not really there anymore, and et cetera. And like the core Fastify team, which is like 3 people, at least as I watch a lot of those repos, it's only 3 people, you know, aren't necessarily doing a lot of those. Some of the ones, like one person I know, he does a bunch of those plugins, but it's probably most likely like self-interest plugins, like, you know, if like, you know, someone might like have a server where they're like saying using Postgres or whatever, so they'll like maintain a plugin for the Postgres or whatever. And it makes sense, right? Because that's someone who kind of like has the knowledge area of those 2 things, so kind of like combines them together. The only other, and like, I'm not saying what's good or not good right now. I actually think the scopes are a good thing anyways, but I just want to talk through it, because like the other thing that I've noted that I don't have empirical evidence for, and like, so I haven't actually seen it happen, but what feels possible, only because people have mentioned this a few, just with the GitHub org, though it's been very rare, is almost like the, hey, I know there's this middleware out there, but when are you going to make a official one for it? Just because it doesn't have the prefix on it, if that makes sense. Not saying that that's actually going to be an issue, because I don't know. But yeah, so the I actually, like, it makes me think like where, like I said, I think that scopes are good, because I think that we're having, you know, we have the global namespace problem. It makes me kind of, you know, I have the same concern you have of like lift and shift all the existing stuff into a scope, because NPM doesn't give a way to alias things. So for example, so if you like take serve static, say, for example, and it's say you lift it into at express/static or at express/serve-static, whatever it is. Now there's two. They're effectively different. Best case, use npm deprecate to mark the global one is deprecated, and tell people to move over there. And then, npm is pretty liberal in their policies, and I read through too. So it basically also means that we have to make sure we constantly fight against anybody trying to take over the global package as well for the infinite future, because npm says that, if you've deprecated and, killed something off, someone is allowed to take over it if you don't reply to the email of them inquiring. It's effectively the same process we got the org, where that's why they took a while, because probably whoever that guy's account was, clearly was never made it a million years ago and probably forgot all about it. And
so this discussion relates very closely to one that is happening in the Node package maintenance working group. It's one of the new ones that has spun up. So there's no resolution on it yet, but this is a very common problem that not only we have. Obviously, Babel did this whole thing. I think it would be reasonable for us to jump on a bandwagon with them and really push for npm supporting something for this. And I think we could state a case, and it wouldn't affect us in the next 6 months, year, but if we make the case well enough to npm and they start supporting it at the registry level, in theory, a year from now, we could then have that feature and use it to remove our stuff from the global namespace.
Right, because in my mind, what an alias really would be is just, how they have the npm upgrade feature, right? There's a lot of people who do use it and a lot of people who never use it, but still, that's where I see, that's at least just, I don't know all the ins and working, but that's what I feel is the minimum work, where you did an npm upgrade, and instead of it just going serve static, 1.2.0 to 1.5.0, it would know, because of you told it moved, that, well, even 1.5.0 has been superseded by at express/serve static, 1.7.0, and then the upgrade would not only just change the version, but it would actually change that package name that's in your own JSON. So then it's almost there's this linear progression, and people can easier, instead of them ending up upgrading to almost a dead end package and then needing to see the npm deprecates yelling at them and then change the thing over. And of course, the only downside to that is I guess I didn't think about that through before I stated it, because you'd have to change all your acquire statements, of course.
Yeah. So that's the hard part.
I guess it could alias that too. I guess it could alias that on the file system level, but
also, I think Tink might have a solution for this. I feel like I remember reading, because Yarn has that new thing, and then npm's version of it is Tink, and it doesn't have a node modules directory at all, and it uses resolution to do everything, and just has a global bucket.
So it hooks into that. Yeah, it hooks into the little registration.
Yeah, I think there's opportunity there, and I think the ecosystem probably will just naturally go to this, because clearly large module ecosystems are having these problems, right? It's not like we've made this problem up for ourselves. And I guarantee you the Babel people are not happy with the amount of issues they've gotten from this transition. They would probably get on board with any proposal to help, solve a package name migration or whatever, we could propose.
I think that I think that, as you said, the package maintenance group, I wonder, I know they're not npm obviously, but still, I wonder if we could also help discuss there, and if people seem on board, maybe they'll help us, they'll help be a bigger voice when we ask npm for this, especially if we can kind of flesh out almost like what it would look like.
Definitely.
At least a basic support of what an alias would look like. I think that would probably make it a little easier pill to swallow too. So, because like I said, like a basic support really is just that the flow of just upgrading it, at least to me, you know, rather than anything bigger than that, like actually copying all the history. It'd probably in the registry still look like two different packages, and one package would have full history out of there. I mean, it'd be cool if it was all there, but I mean, gotta start somewhere.
GitHub does when you rename a repo would be probably the end goal, right? Where it copies over all the issues and the whole commit history is still there. Like, you know, same with, you know, so NPMs would be all the versions, something like that. But even if we didn't have that, just the bare bones stuff would actually be fine for our use case.
Exactly. So that way, you know, all the tutorials and whatever and stuff that's like saying npm, especially because if I just typed in npm I serve-static, and what actually ended up installing was, and it's in my package.json, add express/serve-static, and it would like, you know, make, you know, because npm still highly just manipulates inside node_modules directory. So it'd probably like make maybe a symlink of like serve-static into that other one. So that way the requires could still work. That'd be pretty cool.
Actually, that would be, and that seems pretty straightforward too there, as far as a recommendation.
Yeah, I'm sure there's cases on there, but it's just a thinking thing. And I think that would be really awesome, because I would love to, if we start using namespace, to lift and shift all this crap over, so then it's just all there. Like, you know, almost like where every single like repo, the same name of the repo in our org is the same name of the module underneath our, you know, namespace. So,
yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and that's what I would want. That's where I want to get, basically. And like, you know, we aren't churning out tons of new modules, so that's why it's not like a super big rush. But still, like, the only one thing, like, and I had thought about this a while back too, and like, you know, because if we couldn't migrate everything, like I was thinking, like maybe we could like potentially a place could start would be like kind of like in the JS HTTP area even, because so for example, that one's hard to come up with names for things because people have taken all the global ones. So for example, like I got like I got ones because I was able to rush some of them because it was still, some people still didn't have one. Like, so for example, we have the module content-type, which does parsing and formatting content-type header, and also content-disposition for the content-disposition header. But like one thing that a bunch of the modules all like either emit or a few of them parse inside of our greater org is cache control. And there's already someone who has cache-control, and at that point, you know, blah, blah. So like, that's why I thought like, you know, JSHTTP, for example, might even be like a good use case, because I think there are things that we have sprinkled rando code through a bunch of our modules that should be a module on its own. But like, I've almost like hesitated to like even make them because, you know, it would kind of like fit in weird with the rest. And, you know, that's not a common place people interact with. And what that would do is a lot of those modules in there support down to Node 0.6, for example. Though I've been mostly, when there's major versions, I've been like erasing that. It's actually just because of Travis. Travis has made it really hard because they've deprecated the distribution of Ubuntu that Node 0.6 works on. So you have to like now compile from source on Trusty, and you have to set your C++ compiler with certain flags so it doesn't like create like 300 megabyte log files for every one of your builds. It's kind of ridiculous. So I've been just kind of dropping that one. But like realistically, to correctly support scoped modules, you would either have to have a minimum of 0.10. Even that's kind of iffy because 0.10, you know how they bundle NPM. So like ideally, I like to work on it where if we support, say, Node 4.0, ideally, to me, supporting Node 4.0 means if I just went and installed 4.0 from Node's website, you know, whatever NPM it came with, it would work on. So 0.10, obviously, like they introduced scope in like NPM that was bundled in like 0.10. I don't know, 12 or something like that. So realistically, we would stop even supporting that. And at that point, because O.12 had such little adoption and IO.js is kind of like a weird one, that would basically just say like, hey, you know what? Like definitely 4.0 would be basically like definitely the minimum at that point. Obviously, a lot of these low-level JSHTP modules are literally just plain JavaScript, so it's not like they wouldn't technically work. But like, you know, I do that for a lot of the modules anyways, where like they're say like a module is literally like return a function that does 2 + 2. That's it. Like I would still declare a minimum version of Node just because it's like realistically I'm testing on this and I can only promise this much, you know, and you can do what you want to do. And, you know, things like Babel and stuff these days, people can always, if they really wanted to, transpile it to another one. But that's a different topic. But just in general, though, that's kind of like, that was one of my thoughts along, you know, with scope modules is maybe that could be like a place where we could start playing with them maybe as well.
I think that'd be great. I do think we would want to major version bump when we migrate. I think.
Well, yeah, and like especially if we end up dropping the node versions, right? That would basically almost like be the reason to major bump, kind of like in the first place.
Even if there's no code change, I think it's a major version to change the name of the package. You know, I know that's not a thing because NPM doesn't support it, but still, I think that's a reasonable.
Yeah, I've always operated like that because for a couple of reasons. We did that. Like I said, the only times we've ever kind of like done that was when we were trying to like consolidate the serve names.
Did you major version bump then?
Correct. So what we did was like say it was like the 1X series. I made it 2.0, even though there was no real changes, but like it gives you kind of like version continuity between the two. So let's like, well, 2.0 starts here and and the 1X is here basically kind of thing. And I didn't bother like even trying to like copy the packages. I've seen at least one thing do that, but then of course all the dates are now wrong, of course, and it's kind of weird. So the GitHub though is still the same repo. So it's still, the GitHub repo still had the full history, including the name change, but yeah. And then when we did it, we bumped it specifically, started the new major after the other one. So for example, we didn't start the next one at 1.0 again, because that would only just probably cause a little bit more confusion there. Even though there's no reason why we couldn't dev, I just felt like it would be confusing to have like it merge to another one and like you got overlapping, especially when it comes to GitHub anyways, because you got to tag them with version numbers. So I don't want to end up overlapping there anyways. So, but yeah, so I think like the takeaway is like if we want to like at least like open a discussion like at the package maintenance group, like, you know, because like you said, like I think there are a lot of people, especially like these older projects like us and a lot of these others, I think like there's a lot of them who I think at this point would benefit from going under a scope, and especially ones that are kind of done. I mean, think about ESLint. I mean, I install all kinds of crap that ESLint dash. I mean, that's another one right there. So
yep, and those ones are interesting because that's a requirement of their architecture, right? Is random people are publishing with ES dash something, and it means that that means it's a plugin, right? And it has to be ESLint dash in order to work in their ecosystem, but they're supported by anybody, right? Which means that the core ones can't even use their own namespace to indicate anything, you know, and they're competing directly against the non-core ones. So I think they're a really good example where it'd make a lot of sense to move their core packages into the namespace and let the global be for plugins written by, you know, whoever.
Right, or even plugins by themselves, but still, like
right, sure.
Because
but
they could then, you know, they could even like publish, you know, like if they had an official plugin, they could publish under their scope, and then they publish the global one that just requires that.
Yep.
And if they really wanted to, or even like have it so if you had both installed, like maybe it prefers the you know, the scoped one or who knows what. But regardless, I think that there's, I think, other people who would be, interested in like a migration. Think about like Happy would, I think, could be another one too that would, and like I said, Fastify right now started with global. I mean, next thing you know, maybe they'll probably realize, oh man, we should have started with a scope. So like, I think there's a lot of large.
And so Mateo is a participating member of this working group. So I'll maybe open an issue over there. Or there's another meeting for that group next week, I think. Maybe I can bring it up. I'm also participating in that. So
yeah, because like I said, I think like even they give examples of how they have to choose like weird things. Like they have like a middleware adapter. So like you can kind of like use Express.middleware in your app, and I think it's called like middle or MIDI. It's because they had to figure out some name. Yes, it's MIDI.
Yep.
MIDDIE. It's like that's like, I mean, that's kind of like the problem here with the global namespace. You got to kind of like, you end up where these things are using like weird names. And that actually, I think in a lot of ways makes it hard to discover too.
Yeah, I completely agree. Especially if we start doing, so I think when which might transition well here, when in 5.0 or 6.0, when we end up publishing our own wrappers around rec and res, which obviously we're pretty sure we're going to have to do, it would be great if those were at express/request, at express/response, or something discoverable in a way that people, without having to go and dig in the code, will know what they do. So I think that would be a great set of first modules, an express/app.
Right, because I mean, I wonder if I literally look right now, express-request. Is that a module in NPM? It is.
Yep.
What about express-rec? Oh, that one's not one. But still, like.
Well, now that you said it, though, somebody's going to go publish it.
Yeah, but express-res is one. So, of course, if you did rec-res, well, you can't do that now because even though rec's available, res is not available.
Yep.
I know request is not available, so it doesn't even matter at this point if response is available, though it is not available. So I am going to go through and try to go through this whole process to try to like claim all these global things, and that's why like I think like doing the scopes is beneficial in that way, because it's just like discoverability, like you're saying, like because one of the main goals, like when Express 4 came out, and then as we go forward to Express 5, is like that we want to split the pieces up into like a bunch of different modules for various reasons. But one of the reasons, at least in my mind, is so people can actually like use them in various ways. And I mean, I see a lot of people all the time, like for example, using the router module, which is the Express router. I mean, we're lucky we got the name router. Jonathan got that. I don't even know. I don't know if he had to like get it from someone else or not, but whatever. I mean, some of that stuff is just because it's still kind of early, but that should really just be probably Express router. This is another example.
Can we talk a little bit about that? Should it be? Because I thought one of the things you mentioned in the issue when I first brought this up was we should keep the Express namespace for things that couple to Express APIs, and the router is not agnostic. So would we want that, like, if we were using that as a good example to start discussion, would we want the router to be under Express, or would we want it to be under Pillar.js, because that's what we did on GitHub?
Yes. So the state it is in today, yes, it would not go under the Express namespace in my opinion, but like the discussion I think will change a lot, when it comes down to the, our own request response wrapper classes, because that I think changes the game a lot. But even if that, right? Because I almost like when it comes to those, I'm not even sure. I almost like potentially we should actually throw those into JSHTP, Pillar.js, or even like a whole new thing for that. But regardless, that none of it necessarily means, like, say, for example, there can't be an Express/router that actually is like effectively a subclass of the Pillar router that maybe does add some specific Express hooks because who knows what, but or it could even just to sit there as an alias, like literally just requires it, but just like aids in discoverability. Because I did see someone mentioned me, and that reminds me, I keep forgetting that someone said like there was some issue on GitHub. They added me in it. That's how I found out about it. But they go, oh, well, we need to use the Express router. So they're requiring Express and using router export. And someone was like, oh, no, it's just the router package. You can just use that. And then they're like, oh, well, it doesn't say anywhere on that module that that actually is the Express router and blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to kind of add that anyways. But regardless, like, so in some ways, like, having it as a module like called Express router, even if it's just a re-export, ideally it would actually do something more functional. Like I said, perhaps subclass it in some way that's Express specific or whatever, just for discoverability. And that's just and like I said, that was just, I was using it as an example. But yes, I definitely absolutely agree that the things that we put, like, you know, we start talking about scopes, it's just like the orgs. You know, they should have some rhyme and a reason. And like I said, like, even though, for example, the middleware technically in Express, like as I've been writing, you know, try to keep all the middleware in our org where they don't use Express specific API, if at all possible, and none of them actually do. They're still, of course, under the Express org because they're middleware, but then they could be under pillar. But at this point, it's kind of almost like for discoverability almost, because people think about it as an Express middleware. But like I said, that's where, like, especially when you start publishing the scopes, like that can help aid where it's like, look, this is an organization for discoverability, and that would help a lot. Like, you know, to your point, for a lot of things, obviously you can make web pages and stuff all day, which will definitely help too. But there's a lot of people who, you know, there's all kinds of different signals people look at, right? And and there's a lot of people who search on NPM, and they might search for like, I need Swagger, so they'll just type in Express space Swagger on NPM search and be like, go, where's the Swagger?
Yep.
And of course, then they'll look at the results and try to figure out which is the one they should use. They don't really have any time to figure it out, and so they try. That's why they try to look at the indicators, you know. And so, you know, which is your point, right? They seeing like Fastify dash whatever. They're like, oh yeah, it's like part of Fastify.
Yeah, they'd click on the GitHub link and they look at it and they go, oh yeah, look, it's the, you know, it's on their GitHub. Yeah, this is them. Cool, I'm using this one. And they don't even read the code. They don't even look to see whether, and I think to your point, that if it's out of date and maybe doesn't work, that's a different problem. But I don't think most of the people even like would think about that. They would just start using it.
Right,
You know,
and like I said, I mean, it's a little different too, because one of the things, at least I've always prioritized with Express, is just like backwards compatibility and making sure people's things keep running. But like, obviously, don't want to stop things, and that's the whole reason why I think you know, I came to the realization, you know, last year, you know, with this HB2 talk about we just need to decouple ourselves from. We need this layer between us and Node.js so we can continue to stay compatible, because ultimately a lot of these things don't change. So why should people have to change all their code for no good reason? You know, it's just like, I want to use HTTP2, so I have to like rewrite all my stuff. That doesn't make any sense. And like find out what works when like effectively there's no reason, everything shouldn't just work. You know, you have to wade through all these things, because that's the problem. That's the good and bad thing about having an awesome ecosystem. You get all kinds of value out of it. You get people who know all these different things that you might not know, and like provide the value, and people, you know, and have connected two pieces together, and now have created that value point. But then if one of those pieces, like, and usually it's one of those pieces is the anchor point. So for example, most of the time it's the web framework is the anchor point. So if it's using Happy, you're looking for stuff compatible with Happy. If you're using Fastify, stuff compatible with Fastify. Express, stuff compatible with Express. You're specifically looking for, how do I use MySQL and Express? You're not looking for, oh, I need to use MySQL. Okay, what's compatible with that? It's usually completely the other way around. So, you know, because that's the anchor point, that's usually the point for compatibility. So of course, keeping, you know, trying to like not rip apart your ecosystem I think is valuable in a lot of ways. And, really fast moving things, I feel like ends up tearing apart the ecosystem in various ways, just because there's just too much churn. A lot of these projects were just like I made it, it works probably really well. Doesn't really need to be maintained, and I've probably moved on since then, but I've added value to the community that should stay there, of course. So, but I don't know. Regardless, that's a whole other thing, and I think that's a lot of what the package maintenance working group kind of like generically is thinking about as a whole for Node is in general. But yeah, so
yeah,
that's
its charter for sure.
Yeah, and I think and that brings up, of course, interesting questions. If we do scopes, it's like, do we have ways where hey, you know what? Maybe you made this cool community thing, and we have some kind of method where maybe you can actually get it published under our scope. But the trade-off is that you set it up with us where it's as long as you continue maintaining it, you'll continue maintaining it. But there's a good way where we're we have a way to claim these things and move them around if it stops getting maintained and someone else wants to basically to be the arbiter, kind of like what NPM just does as a generalness of modules. So, but that's a wider discussion. But it just that's what things that bring in my mind more when you talk about these scopes as well.
I think definitely the best way to avoid squashing the innovation that is happening outside of any published scope would be to make a very easy public way for people to get their packages in the scope and taken over in a way that is good. I think that's a fair bit of work.
Correct. Yeah. So it's definitely a very future pie in the sky kind of thing, especially at this point. But it's just another reason why I think that scopes can be good, especially the organization, because if the module is published in an organization, the organization owns it, even though we can add people as ability to publish it, and potentially actually just set up maybe some kind of have it set up through a CI pipeline instead of actually having some person be able to even directly publish it. But that's another, of course.
And that would be a benefit to the user being the original developer of the packages. They'd get all this cool ecosystem maintained, stuff from joining it. I think it has a lot of opportunity. I think that it is not as important as getting 5.0 out.
Correct.
But and again, this is maybe where the package maintenance ecosystem group or whatever could help, maybe help us a bit, or maybe we could figure out some way to work more closely with them and have maybe some people from Node Core have some stuff around getting those pipelines set up that Node Core uses, and maybe we could piggyback off some of it. I don't know. I think there's opportunity there. Do we think that it should block using the scope until we have that stuff worked out, or do you think it's all right to start letting things be public?
So you kind of faded out a little bit, but you probably just said let things be published in there.
Well, so I said, do we want to wait until we have those kind of things worked out, or do we want to just start doing it now with whichever ones we think are viable, and let the process around other people applying come later? Is that all right?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question, and I think for something new, we could always publish it there and try it out. I also just, as an aside thing, I also grabbed, because I wonder if you can I don't think you can actually unpublish stuff. So if you browse the organization thing, that whatever we publish there will be there forever.
Yeah.
As far as I know. You can't even just hide it. At least currently, maybe that's another feature request, for example. I also grabbed the names that matched our 3 orgs as well after you had said that. So we do also have Express.js as well, which matches our org name. just for whatever it's worth.
That's a good point too. I wonder if should we just use that one since that's what our GitHub one is. Right.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if we like wrote it down in like an issue and like said like what it would look like, maybe that would help us decide like, oh yeah, that one looks right. Like, you know what I mean? Like seeing like it written out as like @express/express or and like @express/request or like @express.js/request. And like we could still use both too. Like maybe middleware all go in one and like the core components go in another one, for example. So we could always play with that in like an issue real quick, because that definitely gives me some little thoughts there as well. Like maybe that will help us.
Yeah, I think so. I'd be happy to open up. So I think I opened up an issue. How about I'll take on the responsibility of taking this conversation, writing down the takeaways, and posting it just in that issue, and then maybe we can link it up in the notes so that anybody who is listening or stumbles upon it can give an opinion, and then maybe we table the discussion again for, you know, a couple of weeks, see if people respond to that, and then make a decision.
Yeah, and like you said, we already have a thing open, 71, and I just put in there real quick about the three names that I grabbed, so it's just in there as well. So, yeah, and like we can like because the next one's in 2 weeks, so we can always we can easily group there and see, because yeah, I think like that makes a lot of sense. And there's nothing that would keep us from moving in there. Because like I said, I think like some of literally the only real pause is just like that I even have is just the fact that if we publish something there and you go to the org on NPM, like someone goes to it and like looks at the list, you can't remove something. But like I think that once again, that could be something like we could ask for as a feature from NPM, not like to delete the package, but like say, hey, is there like a way where you can like hide the package from the list?
Yeah.
Maybe there is a trick that they know of. But see, like that's another thing, like you know, because I think that like for example, if this was an org on GitHub, I'd say screw it, do whatever, because you know we can always decide again later. But like I like the fact that it just they're there forever, just like at least just visibly there forever, like is what literally what causes me hesitation, because it's like the whole measure twice, cut once kind of weird thing. We already have global, and like we've done some stuff there, and like I think that would be pretty cool if they could just hide it, which they might, because I know they have like a difference between you can make it public or private. Though I don't know if you can like change a public to private, because we don't want to break people either. Like, so my idea of that feature would just be like hide it from the list effectively.
Yeah, it would still be published. They'd still be able to install it.
Exactly.
What to install, instead of having it just there in a big old list of these are packages Express had at one point but don't care about anymore.
Right, almost like the list is like what's active, almost. You know what I mean? Versus like what is just has ever been.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, I know that we're pretty much almost at the hour now. From last time with the Express 5, I said I would like get out the whole list of like all the different things. I never ended up getting around to that too much. I mean, there is the pull request. That's where I was going to derive it from, is like the pull request that's actually on the GitHub repo 2237, which has the checkboxes are accurate, as in what's done and what isn't done. And done in this context is what has actually landed on the branch. So that's the done on that pull request one. There are some that are done, not landed, as in like, I think one of them there is the setting stuff that I know you were working on, Wes. I'm trying to look through there. I don't remember if it's listed in here settings.
I think it is. But that's the kind of stuff, to be honest, I think unless we can get it really wrapped up quickly, I don't think a lot of people are sitting here going, oh, I wish that feature existed. Like,
correct.
A nice to have is that Git isn't multi-purposed, So it, it's something we should land. But if it landed 2 years from now, no one's like clamoring for it. Versus promise support, which is like everybody and is asking for it.
Yeah, I think that one of the only things I can think of off the top of my head that hasn't landed that I feel like is important because I know people cause pain is the process to get path to regex upgraded.
Yes, that one definitely.
The main promise stuff has actually landed and is in the alpha. So that's why I'm thinking about what not landed thing is like something I think that people will care about. Now, I have actually given some thought. I was actually thinking about that before the meeting for the path to regex thing. Like basically the pain point is if we just immediately upgrade it to the current version, there's a lot of like weird incompatibilities that, especially these people use stuff that they copy and paste from the web. Like I constantly see people, for example, using app.all star and then a route that's supposed to do everything. And they don't even use like the parameter that star slurped up. Like they could have just used app.use, for example. But that's literally doesn't work anymore with the new path to regexes because you can't just have a single star in there. You got to wrap it right in the capture now. But I want to give people the chance, especially in that, because I think that is going to be probably like out of everything the most a semi-painful one for existing apps. And like I want to make it not so painful. And like I wanted to, and it's not too difficult, was just to make like a simple little wrapper library that basically took that little like, blob of code that right now that's in Express that creates the regex and then takes the regular expression and then takes the path and puts it in there and then makes the rec.parm stuff out of it. That had already been stripped out into a modules in Pillar right now called path-match, I believe. The downside is the path to regex that's in has been upgraded all the way to like the most recent, basically. So it's hard to use that as our little stone because what I wanted to do was take a package, publish it with the exact version of path to regex that Express 4 has now, put it in the router in Express, and then because, for example, it's 0.1.7, I believe, something like that. But 0.2.0 is so easy to make compatible because I think it's mainly that star thing. Like you can literally have that wrapper, see the string that comes in, see that there's a star, auto just wrap it and emit like a deprecation message, right? So that way people can just like say, oh, having a plain star is deprecated. I need to do whatever.
So couldn't we do that just in router, right? We already have the fast slash and fast star.
Correct. Yeah. We just need to do it somewhere. The downside to router is that Express 4 does not directly use router right now.
Yeah, forgot. Right, yeah. But we could do that we could do it in Express and in the router at the same time.
Correct. Yeah. But basically that's my thought is I just wanted, that's kind of like my main motivation right now is like, that's like the main thing that I know will be kind of painful and I know has a good benefit to upgrade because it does have like, I just saw another issue open up. You probably saw it the other day where it's like, can't use a literal colon.
Yep.
And it's because the O.1.x doesn't have the concept of the escaping mechanism that it has now. So like you basically have to pass in a literal regular expression, but then of course the only capture groups you can have are going to be number based. You can't name them obviously and blah, blah, blah. So
I was just looking at the PR that I have on router to do the upgrade. And I wrote a section of docs.
Yes.
And it is mostly, it goes over the star part.
Correct.
And it goes over, so it has a line here that says needs more info on parameters have suffixes that augment meaning. So that's the only section here that looks like maybe we need more info on the breaking changes.
And of course, like the reason that's a problem too is because we're doing such a gigantic jump at once as well.
Yeah, we've been better about doing it incrementally, right? This would be. a path. That would have been a long time ago that this happened, right?
Yeah, and like, it wasn't easy. There was a bunch of breaking changes because it did. I mean, like I said, they're pretty much all good changes, of course. So it's not like there were bad changes, so. But
Right.
yeah, like especially the star change, right? Because obviously, having the single star was nice, but of course it meant like you couldn't use star in your regular expression because it was interpreted as something different. But like, yeah, I mean, like some of the things like path to regex could actually, if we really wanted to, we could get it directly in there. But I think it's too far gone at this point because we wouldn't be able to get everything anyways. So putting weird things in there wouldn't necessarily help us.
So do you think that star one is, I think, the most prevalent one, right? I mean, do we so like
Correct.
that would solve a little bit hacky, but with, like you said, a deprecation warning. The other ones, to me, like don't seem, yeah, they're going to be breaking, but they're going to be in 5.0. That's the whole
Correct.
point. So
yeah, so the whole idea is just to kind of like, yeah, and the whole real idea is just to like land something that kind of helps people out at the end of life. Basically, as 4 goes into maintenance, effectively. Like just help them like, oh, I upgraded to this 4. Oh, I see that, this is deprecated. And then they can actually literally use the new one as well, of course, because you don't want to mark something deprecated, but then they can't do anything about it. So that way, of course, then when they turn around and 5 comes out and then they actually get ready to upgrade to 5, they'll have at least less things that they're broken. Because there is stuff in 5 currently that we have, like a good one is rec.host versus rec.hostname. So host in 4.x or host name, one of the two. Oh yeah, it's host. Host is not host. It's a host name, so it doesn't have the port on it. So of course we added host name in Express 4, aliased it, said host was deprecated. But of course we can't have a functional host. So you can't, if you actually need host, it still doesn't exist in 4. You got to wait till 5. Or do something different. Like for example, you can read the header, of course, but then you have to do the X forwarded host parsing too. That's the only thing it really does over just reading the header. But still, like there's definitely going to be stuff that they'll have to do for 5, and I think that's perfectly. I think that's acceptable. That's the whole purpose of having the major versions. So, and like. Whatever we can help them with is awesome. I think that's the star one is simple because I think it's a super easy one to detect because they clearly don't work in the new path to regex. And I think like if we can get it, so if we can publish a 4 in such a way where not only does it emit a deprecation message, but then if they use like the new star syntax where they put like dot star inside, that it actually worked. Even if it meant we then actually rewrote it back to the old one and still used 017, I think that's still probably I think that's still helpful. Though if we could upgrade at least path to regex a tiny bit, that would be cool, but I don't know if that's feasible. But that's what I was starting to kind of like dig into that just a little bit just to see what would be a good thing. But I think that out of all the things not landed, I think that would be super useful. And I say that I use the term super useful because I'm not even saying that's needed. It's like if needed, I feel like that could technically be shedded too. Because like I said, I think that it's at this point we're saying kind of like spring, around like when Node comes out, the Node flips, which is usually in April. So I say March, April, but like basically like a month or 2 out. So we're basically, and like we have docs that we need to get done too. So I want to flip it to beta soon here and then, get working on the docs as well. The docs aren't too much. It's mostly just migration guide. And then at some point, we just need to copy the 4.x section into a 5.x and then, remove the methods that got removed and add, alter some of the ones like rec.host to actually say what it is now.
So if we assume that that's going to probably take a month to get the docs once the beta is published, which I think is maybe a reasonable time frame, that really means we need to get the rest of the stuff done in the next modify to hit that timeline, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a good target to have that won't leave us like too painful is I think we should like think about mid-February. I think that makes sense.
Yep.
Because that gives us a good mindset target to say, yes, this one, like, and it gives us some wiggle room in case we go a little bit over, but it won't be like too crunchy, because then, you know, 1 month from that would give you mid-March. And I think that's a lot of cushion too. Now, Node usually waits all the way to the end of the month, but I don't think, I'm not saying to do that. Like, I think March is fine. But that's kind of like to give, that's like what I'm thinking basically. And that's why I'm like just focusing on what's landed now and saying like, yeah, whatever. And so I was just wrapping up, like moving through the upgrades on 4.18 one, which will basically be the last minor 4 we really are doing anyway. Because it's probably, in my mind, it's 4.18 and then basically, you know, barring any kind of like necessary things for like security or whatever, but we get 4.18 out, and then basically 5.0 is out based on 4.18. And then of course, you know, as we do things, there'll be a 4.19, which will like roll up into probably 5.1, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, that's how close the timeline is. I think we should shoot for, is like, and then like I said, we can still work on major stuff after we release 5, and that'll just be 6, and we'll get on that, and then, you know, we'll see where that fits in. But I don't think that would be too crazy, and I think, like, you know, saying we'll keep pushing it is, you know, where we end up where nothing releases anyways. So
yeah,
you know, we need probably some time to get all that stuff worked out. In case you're wondering, like last time I heard, like they're trying to get like the HTTP 3 published like into RFC state like June of this year.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's just RFC. It's still really hard because the state of things right now is like Node literally cannot implement it because OpenSSL does not have stuff. Well, so technically Node could, because they bundle an OpenSSL, so you could float a patch over that adds necessary stuff to OpenSSL. But still, like, there's these weird dependencies, and it has these things going on. So I think we're still a ways away from that actually being into things, but still, like, you know, they're definitely progressing there. So I think, you know, after that, I think we'll get that 5.0 release, and probably that's going to be the main focus. Probably, I would think of our next one is just getting our facade nailed out, so we can, you know, wrap around 1, 2, 3, etc., and like almost be like, this is the slate of the ecosystem here. You know, we a good, like, you know, what, you know, 6+ years of the same interface of rec and res, and now there'll be another one that hopefully will last at least, you know, that long as well. So
this will be important work that I think will also extend a little bit beyond just Express. If we do it well, I imagine all these other frameworks are going to look to what we roll out to support the same across their ecosystems. I know other ones have already rolled out HTTP2 support, but their reach is not as much, and they are not trying to solve for interop. And I think if we can solve for interop, then you know, I imagine a lot of people will use those. So
right, yeah, they have a couple downsides to the ones that are out right now, is that some of them still expose the same problem that I know we would have if we just did the thing, which is where your rec.headers are going to look drastically different, just even at that level, where you have to know to look at :authority versus host and deal with all that stuff. And that you can't write back certain headers, and you have to understand that kind of just those slight differences, which I think, you know, middleware should not have to care about, even if not only because in principle they shouldn't care about it, but also because that just makes it that much of a big swamp of compatibility issues. But also, they all do the one thing that I really want ours not to do, is they still give you a way to get to the raw recognize object. I think that was just a way to say like, oh, and you can still just do it. I think we should really think really hard and like treat these objects, especially because we're going to use new nodes, right? So we can implement them as what you would call an inside-out object. So you would use the weak map to get the link between there. So it's literally not possible for them to get it. So that's all something we'll have to think about. But that's what's on my mind. You know, and we can always add it back later if we realize it. But it's hard. You can't put it in there first. You can't. Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, so cool. All right.
So do we think that this list, my only concern is, do we think that this list, assuming we strive to get the path to regex update and I guess, and maybe a few other little ones, do we think this list is achievable by mid-February? So we've got 3-4 weeks. Like, is that something we can realistically hit?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think like we should really just say like, hey, you know what? When it comes to the time, like what's not checked isn't in there, rather than saying like we have, you know, I'm like we should just take the approach of like what's there is there, and it's just we'll cut it off basically by time versus like what's actually in there, especially because we already landed some pretty big things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even the async, the basic async we have in there is nice because, you know, a lot of people are currently using async, which, you know, effectively kind of works, but a lot of them don't realize, you know, when you await, you know, something in there, that when it then rejects, so the await then throws, it doesn't actually throw to Express, which Express would have caught. Instead, it rejects that promise, which Express will do nothing with, which I think is the most surprising thing right now. So even just getting that basic thing will help a lot there.
I agree.
And then, you know, you have a proposal for like a whole new change of flow, which could, you know, especially, I don't think it's necessarily bad or anything, but like, you know, I think that coupling that too, potentially with like these new requests and responses, because that flow you're talking about leads really well to, instead of getting, getting a rec and res object already and manipulating res, that flow like of promises really fits in with that kind of like other kind of approach that's classical, where you get the request and at some point you create the res object and you resolve that res object, and that's the response that's sent out.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I think that is a huge change.
I know, but like so might be this thing, and that's what we get to figure out, right?
Yeah, so, we have to figure that out, and I think we definitely can't do that now. And I do agree that the proposal I had on the router is nowhere near. So I actually tried to hack together on top of the router what you're talking about, which gives this whole other, you know, it's a good flow. It's a different, you know, maybe more modern, some people might argue, feeling way to work. But it's basically impossible with the router semantics that we have.
Right.
It just doesn't work, which is fine. It's not that they're bad. It just doesn't. It's a different paradigm. If we want to go that route, I think we should really think strongly about whether or not that's just a major version of Express, and whether that's not just, okay, now we support 2 routing methodologies.
Correct, yes.
Because I think it really is 2 totally different paradigms, and it's not really the logical growth of where we're at. It's just a whole nother way. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'd say that we routers, this one has these semantics, this one has these semantics, whatever you want, go for it. They expose the same thing that Express needs, which is these certain methods. Documenting that'll be really difficult. Teaching developers how to upgrade, it will be weird. There's a bunch of stuff, and that's why I'm like, I feel like we should just push all of that.
Right. So the only takeaway I would say for the 5 node for for us to think about, when we talk about like what goes in there. Like I said, I think at this point we should say what isn't landed isn't going. And like basically I would say, think about what do you know in Express could bite us, as Node keeps changing things. What is, obviously like request and respect can always, those prototypes can always bite us, but I don't think that's in scope of change. But just anything else you can think of that has the potential to bite us, as in like make it so suddenly when Node 20 comes out, we say, well, 5.0 can't work anymore.
Yeah.
We have to release a 6.0 and 5.0 is just dead for this version going forward. So I think that's, if you can think of anything like that, those are at this point is the main worth to get in there. And like those are higher priority than even this path.redux stuff, because path.redux obviously has nothing to do with upgrading anything. So anything you can think of there, I think that bring that up, and like that's like we can try to help make sure that land in there. But I think that would be the only things that we'd ever make like even a blocker at this point.
Well, so my only other thing is there are some of these that look like just I hate to use this phrase because I don't like this phrase, but low-hanging fruit. I feel like the PR for changing query parser to simple, like, can we just land this? Like, I know that we're saying we need to draw a line, but like this one seems...
Oh, no, yeah. So, yes, I am going to go through there. That's why, that was actually the main reason I hadn't got the list made yet, because there are a bunch that, especially some of them actually have PRs that just need to be really cleaned up a little, /rebased and landed. So, yes, I think that there's definitely going to be a bunch of stuff that isn't checked right now, get checked off really quick, effectively are low-hanging fruit, because they're either... It was just listed something simple to change, and I didn't end up changing it yet in like the early alphas, but like, or that now have the PRs that someone actually went and made, and that we'll just land now, like that exact example of just changing. So like the changing of the query parser is kind of like one of those biting things, and that's exactly why I want to change it, because QS is just like the way it works. It just has such a high potential that there'll be some kind of security flaw found, like just what used to be fine is now known to be not good anymore, and that effectively it's not compatible. And obviously that won't keep us from still then having to release a major, because QS will still be directly required, but at least it'll be a little bit of a different conversation, because people won't have been using it by default. The other reason is people are still kind of surprised by how it works and blah, blah, blah. And I'd rather just have them opt into the more extended parseling functionality anyways.
Yeah.
But.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on board then, as long as we do get some of those ones that are just like, they're breaking, it sucks, but they need to happen just to, like you said, for future-proof and protect people from the default behavior being less secure or whatever, So.
Yeah, because like I would assume like that whenever Express 5 is released, it's probably going to be like supported by us like at least 2 years after that, just because it might be maybe about like a year before the next major we get the next major out, and then plus like the probably like a year since then, just to make sure it stays supported. Obviously, barring, like I said, if there's some kind of thing where it's like it just does not work with the new Node versions anymore because of some weird reason, it's literally not possible to fix, that changes it a little bit. Though I think like Node, even though they changed things, I think that they expressed the willingness to bite the bullet and make stuff compatible. Obviously things can change over time, but still. Like that's the goal in my mind, at least. But cool. All right. Well, I am tired this week.
Yeah, we're over time.
Yeah. But awesome. It was great discussion. I didn't think we were going to get that last point, so we didn't today. I'll automatically roll that one over. For the next one, I'll put the 5.0 stuff on there again. I won't put on there the scope stuff at first, but if you think, that there's something there, like we can put it on there, obviously.
I'll follow up in the issue. I think that's fine. I think we've had the general discussion, and now if we're all on board with those points, then it's a matter of just deciding, which we can do offline easy.
Yep. And we can always adjust the agenda too as well. So hope, before and say. All right, awesome guys. All right.
Linus, did you have anything?
No, not really.
All right, we're gonna stop our live broadcast here.